Hi, welcome back. This is week 26. This is our 26th video. In this video, I'm going to talk about the progress of our startup and also about a topic that was discussed in the comment section. That is, should you start your startup in an area that you're familiar with or not? Maybe you think that you know the answer to this, but there's actually a twist to it. So stick around. Okay, so let's go on with the video. Hi, my name is Hiroki Kuro. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've done startups in Japan, such as Locondo, an e-commerce service, and Marybiz, which is a outsourcing service supported by moms. I'm currently working with a team of 4 people to ambitiously create a unicorn startup and document the whole process. If you've seen our videos before, we're working on 2 ideas, the escrow service idea and the construction software idea. This week, I'll talk about how it is progressing with these 2 ideas, how our confidence level is, and also the discussion about whether you should start a startup in your familiar area or not. So to begin with, the construction software, we found a lot of softwares in this domain. We started to listen out and understand the functionalities that each software has and the overlap, or if there's anything missing in between. One thing that came up during discussion, during an interview with an ex-civil engineer, was that he would provide RFPs for construction companies, and they would apply, they would prepare their proposal. So this RFP preparation and also this proposal preparation and to scan and review these proposals, this all seemed to be very tedious. We started digging into this a bit more, and we found that for RFPs, they're government-related RFPs, so they call them tenders, but each government usually has their bidding site for procurement. So for example, I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, but Vancouver City has their own procurement bidding service. Also, city next doors, Richmond has theirs, and as with provincial, BC, British Columbia has theirs as well. So you can imagine how many of these websites are around just in Canada, and of course there are each city, each state in the US as well, and also for the federal as well. As a whole as Canada, as a whole of US, they have their procurement. So if you're a construction service and you want to work with government-related projects, you would go on to their bidding site, need to search and keep an eye out of projects that will relate to you, that fit your strength, and to prepare a proposal by the end of the deadline so that you can win that project. This is fine for large companies who have a lot of resources, but for small and medium companies, they don't really have the time to scan all these bidding sites for each city, and of course they can't do it daily. Even for, let's say, you're a Vancouver City construction company, you can't go on the website every day to check if there's anything new related to your company. So we're starting to dig in, like, what is there? Is there any company that curates all that information? Is there any service that helps company prepare their proposal? We're checking out each cities and provinces and federal level procurement website is, how it looks like, if they're using any sort of service on that. We're also starting to interview people who create RFPs, maybe not for government, but for construction or whatnot projects, and for people who actually prepare the proposals. We understand what kind of pain would be related to the process on the proposal side, but also the receiving side. So that's what we were doing around the construction software area. For the escrow service, we kind of hit a wall. Because this is a sensitive issue, you don't want to announce publicly that you've been ripped off. So trying to find out people who have been in that situation is quite difficult. If you have any experience of feeling uncomfortable when you were having business with another company, you weren't really sure if the company would pay you at the end, please let us know. We would love to interview you. Also, if you tried out other products, we have had comments that people were using Escrow.com, but if you had used that, we'd like to interview you so that we can understand more of if that is a good option or not, and what kind of pains are there still related to that option. Lastly, we would like to talk about a topic that was written on the comment section last week. Bogdan mentioned that for the construction software service that we were exploring, he would be a bit hesitant to explore that because he didn't have the expertise. He mentioned that he would recommend us exploring more areas that we were more familiar with. Thank you for that suggestion. Thank you for that comment. So the discussion about whether you should start your startup in an area that you're familiar with or not familiar with, but actually has a big potential. Which option should you choose? Now, to support Bogdan's opinion of starting off with something that you're familiar with, there's obviously a lot of benefits for that. If you've worked in the industry, obviously you know about the norms, you also understand what the constraints are, you understand who are the stakeholders, what their interests are, and you might feel the pain first-handedly. Because you know all this, there's a lot of advantage to start with an area that you're familiar with. Absolutely. So those will be the pros, but for the cons, if you're in the industry too long, sometimes you are stuck of thinking that whatever exists has to be the way it is. And that brings me to the opinion that there's actually benefits if you are an outsider. You do something that is not your specialty, that you're not familiar with. This lets you explore the whole industry with fresh new eyes. We would ask questions that people in the industry would never ask. Why do you do it that way? Why don't you use software? Have you ever considered doing this? So those questions might not be asked within the industry. And the answers to that might be, well, we've been doing this the way we've been doing it for all these years. Why do we need to change? Because even if you have a problem, a lot of situations would be that it would be easier to just go with the traditional way than to try figure out, come up with a new solution. Because the default is people don't want to change. So even if you do have a solution, sometimes the solution doesn't sell well because people are just lazy with that. People just don't want to change. Having a fresh pair of eyes is actually very important. Going to Henry Ford's quote, if you asked the customers what they would want, they would say they won't want faster horses. So if the customer has never explored outside their box, they wouldn't come up with unique or more optimal solutions. Back to the customer discovery discussion that Steve Blank has. Customers don't have the solution. You need to find that out yourself. So if you're familiar with the industry, you might be more familiar with the pain, but that might keep you blind of coming up with a solution. So there might be an advantage as an outsider to openly explore what sort of solutions might exist. From my experience, when I started Marybiz, Marybiz is a back office specific outsourcing service. So it started off with accounting and we did payroll, etc. But I don't come from an accounting background. I don't know about accounting. But what I did know that I didn't really like it. I wasn't really good at that. So I had the pain firsthand. And because I was an outsider, I would try unorthodox ways of solving the problem. And every time I would ask a professional, an accountant, about my idea, they would say, "No way, you can't do it that way. It's very different. People are not used to do it that way. There are already these softwares." They'll give me a lot of pushback on my suggestions. But after working in this industry for 10 years, we've proved that we can change this. We created a very efficient operation sort of creating a accounting or back office factory that traditionally when you were doing back office, let's say accounting, there would be a specialist in your organization, or you would ask an accounting firm to do it for you. It would be a black box. You wouldn't know what was going on. You wouldn't know what the process was. You wouldn't know why sometimes you would get errors in the output. It was a black box. It was a black box. It was inside the person's head. What MaryBiz did, what we changed, we wanted to create an accounting or back office factory. We wanted to just lay out the process first and foremost. We knew exactly what the steps were to be able to reproduce the output that we wanted, the clients wanted. If we have the process, we just need to allocate the necessary personnel, specialties in each process. If we can do that, the whole operation was replicable. Every day, every week, you would have the same output, time after time. We removed the personal attachment to the process. Back then, nobody understood that. Nobody thought this was possible, but we were able to create that. That's because I was an outsider. I didn't believe that the traditional way was the best way. I would push the boundaries. I would push the solution to be as optimal as possible. So summarizing the points of whether you should start with an area that you're familiar with or whether you should start something that is just a big, attractive market, it comes probably down to 3 points. One is, in either way, you have to have first-handed data. Whereas, even if you're in the industry, you might think you know about something, but you actually haven't experienced it yourself. Like maybe your colleagues say that. They were saying X, Y, so you believe that, but you've actually not experienced it yourself. Either way, you wanted first-handed data as much as possible. You want to experience what the problem is, what the operation is, what the situation is. So first-handed data, you need to understand, you need to clarify exactly what is happening. Point 2 is fighting the problem. If you are in the industry and you feel the pain and you know the problem exactly, that's a great advantage. As for an outside, it would probably take much more time. You would guess that this would be a problem, you would talk to the people, sometimes you're off, that's not the actual problem, it's even deeper, or that there's a problem but it's just so complicated, or there's some industry constraints that prohibit you from changing that process at all. So either way, back to the first point, but you need to understand the problem really well first-handedly. And thirdly, lastly, is about the solution. For this point, being an outsider really helps because you don't have any restrictions. You don't have these mental blocks that prevent you from thinking outside the box. You probably have seen a lot of situations where a lot of the solutions are actually borrowed from. We borrowed the concept of manufacturing and we had implemented it in the back office domain. So it's nothing that I knew or I came up with originally. I knew that factories were very efficient and they had a procedure to be efficient. There's a lot of methodologies like Six Sigma, etc. So if you could implement that into back office, right away you would be much more efficient. And I was just puzzled why people didn't think of their operation in that way. Blue collar, white collar, if it's a routine procedure, the same principle should be applied. So for the solution, you want to optimize it in a much efficient way. Sometimes you think of the problem too narrowly, and the solution is just working for a part of that. Whereas if you think of the big picture, you might come up with a much better solution. So back to the discussion. So being an expert in the domain, does that help? Yes, especially for understanding first-handed data. If you can experience the problem, the situation, the understanding of the industry will be much deeper, and first-handed data is something you need to collect. So you will have more access to that. There's benefit for that. But for the solution side, sometimes you need to borrow existing solutions from other industries or existing ways of thinking from other industries. So actually being an outsider helps. So ideally you want to combine these two. You want to have somebody in your team that is an expert in the industry. And also you want to have a team that comes from other specialties that would bring in new ideas to come up with a better solution. Okay, that's it for this week. Thank you for watching this video to the very end. If you have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give it a like so this information can reach out to those who need it, to these startups, to those startup wannabes. We want to share all our knowledge. And by sharing this, by subscribing, by liking this, the YouTube algorithm will push out this video to the people who actually need this. So thank you for supporting our channel. And if you have any comments, questions, discussions that you want to talk about, please write it in the comment section. We love to hear what you want to say, and we will actually create a video about that. So if you have any ideas, if you have anything, please write it on the comment section. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.